It's Thursday, August 28th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. The school year's about to start, and just wondering for all you parents out there, what are the pressing issues on your mind? Back to school costs, education in the province, your community, elections are coming. What are you paying attention to? Parents, grandparents, the lines are open through the show for your thoughts on this, right? As we transition from summer into fall. The numbers to call, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. You can text us, 709-327-8206, the signal at cbc.ca for your emails. So, folks, this is Newfoundland and Labrador. And right across this province, as summer turns to fall, parents have a lot on their minds. I think they always have a lot on their minds, not just this little part of the year, but there is something about the fall start that is kind of special because of that back-to-school bit. So let's dig into that. I'm joined here today by Danielle Seward, Executive Director of the Single Parent Association of Newfoundland and Labrador. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in. Pam Party is here. Pam, give us so mom plus business person plus media, there's a lot with you.
Yeah, there's a lot. I have my hands in many things, what is it? You're busier than a bayman with two wood stoves. That's me.
I think that is a very good description for you.
Yeah. And grandma, because I'm a grandma of 3 small elementary school age kids as well. So Mental Health Foundation of Canada, co-founder and president. Pam Party Promotions is my promotional side. Was the managing editor of the Newfoundland Herald for quite a large number of years. So I can't keep my nose out of politics or anything else. I have to have my say or my reading glasses on as I'm scrolling through everything that's happening because it's all pretty interesting to me.
Well, thanks for coming back in.
No
and
problem.
Bill Jeffrey is here, Lonely Man Project, counselor and dad. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, I'm doing well. We also got the Harbour Strong Project.
And Harbour Strong.
With the Canadian Mental Health Association. So, yeah, it's busy times.
Let's start bullet point. That question, right? What's on your mind? What as parents and folks in the community for Newfoundland and Labrador, what are the bullet points that are on your mind right now as we head into September? So back to school, a couple of elections, and push into the fall. Daniel, we'll start with you.
Sure. So at the Single Parent Association of Newfoundland and Labrador, we are flat out, to be honest. This is our second busiest week of the year, only second to the week before Christmas. So we've actually just finished distributing over 1,000 backpacks to single-parent families across the province. We just shipped out over 400 to rural Newfoundland early this week. And there's a lot of St. John's pickups happening today. So I was glad to get out of the office for an hour to come in and join you guys. But, we're very much on the front lines, and we are seeing just how hard this time of year is for so many families. With the increased cost of living, and, we're all singing the same song when it comes to that. But, a lot of our single parents that come to us for help have a hard enough time figuring out, do I heat my apartment or do I put food on the table, that the cost of back to school isn't even on their radar. So, we've got all these parents coming to us. The average cost of just a simple backpack is $150 per kid. And I've got single parents of upwards of 5 and 6 kids coming looking for help, So it's a bit of an impossible task. And right now, not having standardized lists across the province has been a huge issue for a lot of those folks. We actually had the Minister of Education join us for a little press conference on Tuesday, speaking about their new back-to-school benefit. And one of the things that we've been pushing him about...
It's $100, right?
It is $100 for each child of a family that's receiving income support. And my understanding from that is that they've all been issued. From our association's perspective, that's great. It's definitely a start. We have a lot of working parents that are going through the same issues. I have more and more clients that come to us for support that are working 1, 2, sometimes 3 jobs just to make ends meet. So unfortunately, that benefit doesn't extend to them, which, we've certainly expressed our optimism and hope to see that grow in the next summer or the summer after. But the standardized list right now is a big issue for a lot of parents across the province. You can have two kids in the same grade in the same school, and your lists are different because they're done by classroom. And it's not ideal. Kids are being requested to bring in tissues for the classroom, items that aren't even specific to each individual family. And the worst that I've seen this year are some lists that actually have brands specified on them, which blows my mind. Whether or not you're bringing in a Hilroy notebook or, a dollar store brand. Not that it's made with any ill intent, but it's really creating a strong divide and putting a lot of parents under unnecessary anxiety.
Yeah, because putting out that I want you to shop for certain brands, like, well, wait a minute. I want to shop for what is the best price for me and that will get the job done if I'm a parent in a lot of cases like this, as opposed to like, well, if you're there and it's the brand you just mentioned, like Hilroy, but there's one next to it that's on sale. It's like, well, like this works, doesn't it?
Exactly. It's the same thing. And I think sometimes those lists, like I said, it's not ill intent, but it's coming from a very uneducated place. With someone that's probably very out of touch with reality that a lot of parents in our province are facing. Whether it's that a different brand is on sale or you live in a part of the province
where it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like so many communities don't have the option of going to Walmart or Staples like you would in St. John's, So it definitely puts a lot of unnecessary pressure and anxiety on parents. So that's one of the things that is very much on our mind lately that we've been pushing.
There's a lot there. So Pam, we'll go to you. If there's anything you thoughts on what Danielle was saying, or just in general, what's on your mind as we move into fall?
Well, I think I have a 27-year-old son, a daughter who is 17 going into her last year of high school, and I have 3 grandkids who are going into grades 1, 4, and 5.
So we've got it all covered with you today.
All covered there, the high school, the getting ready for post-secondary. So I've been buying back to school stuff for like 22 years and daycare for longer. So I totally understand. There's an element of excitement in some ways, in some families, if you're blessed, but an element of incredible stress. I remember one of the big items on the school list being the headphones. And what brand are you buying? Because, is it now it's like my daughter's great. She's not a brand specific kid. And she, again, we've been very blessed, but it's okay to go in and get that dollar store earbuds. The gas station earbuds, sometimes are a good price. So I find that hasn't been a huge issue for us going back to school. My daughter, back in the day with my son, you had to go in and you had to go to the Avalon Mall and you had to do your shopping and you were coming out, $1,000 poorer for going into the Avalon Mall because I lived out around the Bay. You come in and you did that. And you had to go to your Costco and your Walmart. And you had to stock up and come back home. And it was an incredibly expensive time. I find with my daughter, she's okay if she goes shopping for a sweater today and it's, that kind of thing. But it's incredibly stressful. We pitched in for our grandkids. We contacted Dix & Co. I don't know if anyone knows about that because they have this list done up, grades, school, and they have the school list. And so we just called up dinga and then clicked the list for the grandkids and had it because my 2 stepchildren have, they're in mortgages, they're, working their tails off. They're doing things on the weekend to try to help the family, to support the family. So that little bit that we did, that $100 that we pitched in is something that doesn't have to come out of their pocket. And even the back to school snacks, the pressure is on. What are they bringing? What are they going to have in that lunch can? Is it going to be a name brand granola bar versus a no-name pack of fruit snacks? Like there's so many things on people's minds. And exiting the wildfires and going into school is already stressful enough, let alone the financial strain that families are feeling.
And the social disconnect then too, if you've got one kid that needs to have a certain brand versus another, and if you put those branded lists as required, but someone can't afford it, it's not just an issue around affordability, but there's that social divide that happens then too between the kids.
Yeah. So it's been over 2 decades for me, so I definitely understand what you tackle when you're talking about going year in over a year, and we got, another bunch of years because my daughter's going to post-secondary and my grandkids are still in elementary school.
Bill Jeffrey, what about yourself?
When I think of back to school, the top bullet point for me is adjustment.
Yeah.
Adjustment for everybody. Right, as they head back, kids got their own stresses, going back, leaving home, getting back on a schedule, the anxiety, who's going to be in your class, you're going to have your friends, that sort of thing. From a parent's point of view, it's a huge adjustment. There's administrative overload, logistics, as you're trying to navigate everything. You got childcare issues, trying to get kids to and from. If you're involved in school sports and activities and that sort of thing, how are you going to fit all that in there? From a counseling perspective, I see a lot of issues, not not any less the money side of it, right? Like it's really hard for parents who have to provide, like you say, brand names and all these other types of supplies for kids to come back to school, and they can't do it. Right? That's very, very disheartening. That really hits a dad's mental health and a mom's mental health as well. But it really hits them hard when you can't provide for your kids to go back to school, right? You think back when I was a kid, and that was always a fantastic thing. Not that we're rich by any stretch of the imagination, but you get the Wilco flyer and you start going through it.
Oh, I remember growing up.
Yeah, it was a big deal to go out and get those school supplies and be ready to go, right? So for me, I think every kid should have that excitement. Yeah. Every kid should have that anticipation of going back to school, and every parent shouldn't have to worry about not being able to provide that for their child. So adjustment is the name of the game going back, and it's not if you have to adjust, it's how you handle the adjustment going back to school that people need to worry about.
We've got a couple elections happening this fall, municipal. People are knocking on doors, right? Provincial, people are knocking on doors. What do you think the issues are going to be, or what are the issues for you? And we don't have to dip far into politics and who you're thinking about and party and whatever else, because there's issues that cut across every single party. They've already come up here: cost of living, food insecurity, mental health and healthcare, social determinants of health. At the same time, the political parties are also talking about Churchill Falls, and there's talk about that being a big election issue. But I'm just curious what your thoughts are on the issues that matter for voting this fall.
I think for the people that I speak with, and from my own point of view, I think I've always said politics is personal. And it's what is happening in your home, what is happening on your street, what is happening within your worldview, and how does that impact your day-to-day and the people that you care about. So, child care is an issue in our family for my stepkids. Both are in jobs that are 12 hours a day, and daycare is not a 12-hour-a-day option. So again, it's, myself and my partner are very busy schedules. We're still in the workforce with our own businesses. We travel a lot for work and for pleasure, and we're not always there. And it's a real strain. We're already thinking about how we're going to manage November when we do go away. Is our granddaughter going to be okay? Is she going to be cared for? Somebody else, another parent has to pick up the slack because we're not around, because $10 a day daycare is fabulous, but it's not covering the needs. And it's not covering the needs of people who are working on the front lines in the medical field. Those folks who are working in our hospitals and in our nursing homes who are working those 12-hour shifts don't get the coverage that they need when it comes to daycare. So affordability is great, but the access points are not serving the needs of the population. And there's a huge part of the population who work for Eastern Health. That's one thing for us that comes up. And I know when you talk about the memorandum of understanding, the MOU, I think that's great long term because the province will have money. And when you have more money, you can spend more money. And you can spend more money on infrastructure, so the roads will be improved, so that'll be great for access. And then you can have more access to programming. But I think that just seems so far off that we're getting lost in the weeds. And the Premier is saying that is probably going to be a number one issue. And it should be on everybody's mind because this is an important point in history. However, so many of us are just trying to get by, like to the daycares or getting off to school. Is a child refusing to go to school? Is there child doesn't like their teacher? Is there, when you're going to the grocery store, are you putting stuff back because the dollars just won't stretch? So all those issues, housing and home care for seniors and senior support, so many issues, right down to the everyday living that I think this is what's the election will probably come down to.
Anyone else?
I think it's related to cost of living. I think most things that we talk about are probably going to, at some way, like the cost of living.
Yeah.
But one thing that we're hearing a lot is around food insecurity. So I know recently the latest Stats Canada report came out. We did some work with Food First NL promoting that. And unfortunately, Newfoundland is not in a good place with respect to food insecurity. And it's a term that I think, people have heard of before, but they maybe don't totally understand or totally see the impact of. But for single parents alone, that report said that in Newfoundland and Labrador, 56.8% of single parent households are food insecure.
Yeah. And so food insecurity, it's the ability to afford appropriate, nutritious food, because there's enough food in the grocery stores of Newfoundland and Labrador to feed people, but people cannot afford it. And the range for food insecurity comes down from, as you know, Danielle, I know, just to explain to the audience, the range comes down to you start to be stressed or worried about food. And then if you're a single parent, sometimes you start skipping meals to provide for your kids. And then sometimes you end up with families who are skipping meals as well, and it can go further down that range for food insecurity. So then when we talk about folks showing up for backpacks and needing back to school kits and these $100 bits, massively important when the margins are so tight, right?
Oh, absolutely. And to see that percentage point, it actually grew 17% in 1 year in our province. So that was only 39% in 2023.
Coming before the pandemic, we had some of the highest rates of food insecurity in the country too. You'd have to go back to the Williams government for when they were lower, and there was that poverty reduction strategy back then for things to have a different conversation around it. And then we talked about this on the show last week. There was a little dip as well when it came to the pandemic because and that's attributed to CERB and other programs and everything else, but then it's been marching along ever since.
Yes, and it's not just, the ability of having food banks. So we recently attended the National Food Insecurity Summit, and our province is one of the only provinces in Canada that doesn't fund food insecurity measures through food banks, which is something really interesting that we learned. Different provinces do different things, but when you see the rate of food insecurity so high here, without that support. So we run a food bank, for example, and we are 100% donor dependent. And being the Single Parents Association, every hamper that we give out goes to a child. It goes to multiple children in a lot of cases. And it's not just not being able to afford the food, but it's accessibility to it as well. So we have a number of single parents that want to visit our food bank, receive right down to nutrition. I mean, that's, food is fuel for your brain, that can't get it because they don't have transportation to our food bank. And we've discussed that with a lot of the food banks, even here in the city. There isn't a delivery model. No. And the worst thing in the world is when you hear from a mom or a dad that wants to access a food hamper, but there's no one to pick it up for them.
Yeah, that barrier.
Exactly. Yeah.
Bill, thoughts on the political side for the fall?
I think it's much along the lines of what you're saying. It's going to be more the social determinants that's going to determine this election. You're in a nice place if the biggest issue in your life is the MOU. Right? A lot of people aren't. Right, so
don't have time to even think about it because it's the day to day of what is later today for meals, tomorrow, next week. Where are we going as a family unit or as an individual or couple?
Absolutely. Right. And you got kids, that are, battling through mental health issues. We got an opioid crisis. None of our kids are immune to any of that stuff. Right. So as parents, as you're watching your kids go off to school, go off to high school, go off to university, right, these things are on your mind. If you haven't got enough money to put them through school, if you don't have enough money to put bread on the table, right, if you can't plan a vacation in November and that sort of thing, the MOU is something that's, on the news, but you might not be paying nearly as much attention as when your candidate comes to the door and you say, what are you going to do about violence in my neighborhood?
Right. All right, thank you for that opening round, folks. This is The Signal. I'm Adam Walsh. Parents, grandparents, summer to fall, We're looking at back to school. We're thinking politics, elections, social issues. If you want to join this conversation and your thoughts, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. Text us 709-327-8206. The Signal at cbc.ca. You'd think I'd have that text line memorized by now. I do not. Jillian Pearson, welcome. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. So, parent, you've been on the show before. Just give us tell folks a little bit about yourself, and we'll start with a question, and we'll go back around with everything else.
So I am a parent of two boys. They'll be heading into grade 2 and grade 5 in the fall, two separate schools. I've spent a lot of time in the policy and advocacy space, around issues that impact parents and families. I come at this not only from, a parent's perspective, but also someone
policy
who's
bit.
a little bit of a policy wonk.
So what's on your mind as August turns to September and beyond? What are the things, whether it's back to school, politics, you name it, what are you thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, back to school is obviously very, salient for everybody. But, I was listening to, Pam on the way here, and I just can't agree more that I think everyone can agree there's these big picture issues out there for sure. But, most people are just trying to manage the issues that are in their own backyard, which is really unfortunate in one sense because a lot of these big conversations need to happen about these, long-term issues that the province are facing. But then, so many people are dealing with these overlapping issues like crime, education, food insecurity, affordability. And, how do you say, well, we need to sit down and talk about, Churchill Falls in our living room now.
Yeah. Right? How do we even have that conversation?
Yeah.
And it's so complicated too. Like, it is such a complicated thing. The summer we've just had with, so we have folks who are homeless because of wildfires. There was the air that all of us were breathing and thinking about these impacts. To have this added to it, so there's the climate change impacts from it. How do you, as parents, deal with it, just everything that is going on? How do you do a day-to-day when it's just like, I think about, so when the Canada Games were here, beach volleyball, there's a picture of folks on the beach volleyball court, and in the background, it was the Paddy's Pond fire of just smoke billowing. And it's just this picture that is stuck with me. And then to think parents of trying to talk to your kids, move through this, also the stress of this climate emergency and the fall, and thinking of Churchill Falls and elections and back to school. How do you manage that? Bill, you're the counselor, mental health expert. How do you, what do you do with this?
You got to focus on what you can control, right? That's the biggest part of this because it's very easy to get overwhelmed. Going back to school in general, it's easy to get overwhelmed as parents. Right? You got so much going on. When you got all these other issues on the periphery that you really can't control, it really comes down to making your world a little bit smaller. Right? Plan what you're going to do tomorrow. How are you going to get to school? What are you going to have for lunch? Right? Plan out your week. Try and stay away from these huge issues that could be, and obviously, we feel very bad for the folks that lost their homes and all that kind of stuff and what they're dealing with. Right? That's unbelievable. But for people that are dealing with, day-to-day life, right? Maybe stay off of social media a little bit. Right? Maybe bring down the screen time. Maybe don't, surf and look for things that are going to add to the overwhelming feelings that you're having. And focus on your day-to-day logistics until you get a routine down, and that'll quiet the noise just a little bit.
Anyone else on that? Pam?
Nova Scotia, I just read something yesterday. Nova Scotia is talking about implementing, now it was the opposition who wanted to bring in something that banned any and all social media for children under the age of 16. And I don't think that's a bad idea. I mean, we're guilty of it ourselves. We have our granddaughter, and she's on her tablet because we're still working, some couple hours in the evening, and before you know it, we kind of forgot she was there. It happens, and I understand it. And I don't necessarily like things to be mandated from the government that are to that degree of saying, if your child can have Facebook or not. But maybe we do need some kind of a reminder that's not okay. The same as you have, it adds to stress. I was listening on my way in here about a Chat GPT app that was encouraging suicide and mentioning ways to cover up failed attempts. That's not okay. I was shocked. Apparently, there's a case where a young child was Googling that. We have a young child, a distant relative in our family. The child is going into grade 2 and told his mother that he's depressed, and that it's the second time he's felt depressed, getting ready to go back to school. Summer's over, the pool's coming down. His mom is not going to be off as much now. He's going to be into a daycare. He's not fussy about his friends. He's fearful. He has all this anxiety, and he's going into grade 2. And where is he learning even that word? Where is he learning that these feelings that he's experiencing are a depression, are a anxiety? So, it's alarming to think as a parent that this is happening. I came home from work that day. I found out about that family situation, and my daughter was kind of grumpy and, not overly friendly to mommy when mommy came home. And I sat her down and I mentioned this conversation with this family member about their child, and she started to cry. And she said, all of a sudden, the fact that I was having trouble with the sign in to this program on the computer is not a big deal. And I'm sorry. Reality strikes pretty bad when you realize depression is happening to children in elementary school.
Right. Jenna, what about yourself? For just navigating these conversations and just, the family unit moving ahead as with just everything going on and the fact it can feel rather overwhelming.
Yeah, transitions are a hard time for lots of families generally without, having pretty pressing issues also kind of looming or lingering in the background. I had a lot of family on the North Shore. I'm from Salmon Cove.
Yeah.
Some of my family were staying with me for some time. That was a big conversation in our house. We played baseball in the summer. We went to the Canada Games baseball games. One night you could barely see across the field. So it was difficult to not have those conversations. And I do believe in, having conversations with kids that are age appropriate, but then, how do you do it in a way that it's not going to cause them additional anxiety when they don't necessarily have the framework to understand, are they in immediate danger or, are they going to be okay? So we are, looking forward to getting back into more of a routine.
Right.
But, in terms of how we are navigating, different things in our house, social media is definitely becoming more and more of a discussion. My oldest son is 10 now, and we've given him some freedom this summer in terms of, he's riding his bike around everywhere. So he has an Apple Watch. He has a phone that we call his landline. It doesn't have any data, but he can access Wi-Fi. And we had what I would call our first big fight this summer. He wanted Snapchat. And I was, I am normally, I don't mind the kids being exposed to different TV shows and music. We try to teach what's appropriate to speak to different audiences in front of different audiences. You might like a song. It may not be appropriate to sing at school, for example.
Yep.
Snapchat, I was like, absolutely not. I will lock you in your room till you're 18. I let you do whatever you want, but I'm putting my foot down
Yeah,
there.
there's a firm line on this one.
Right. So I'm starting to enter, that phase, that season, I guess, of parenthood. His little brother is still, not accessing social media at all, but learning and more things on YouTube. So those conversations and in terms of how they influence our behavior, how they influence our brain, what dangers they can present to you or your friends. Those are things that, obviously will become bigger and bigger conversations this fall, amid the backdrop of things that are going on locally, like wildfire recovery.
Yeah. Pam, I will say, when I was 10, I was delivering the Newfoundland Herald in Mount Pearl, and we had 2 channels at the time, and I would look at like the TV guide and be like, I wonder what it's like to look at all those channels. And here we are today talking about Snapchat and everything else with AI in the world. So
have changed.
yeah. Danielle, what about yourself on that?
So I'm in a different stage of parenthood. My daughter's only 18 months old, so I'm not yet dealing with some of those issues at home. I know myself and my partner always talk about, oh my God, our daughter's going to grow up in a completely different world than what we did in the 80s and 90s, which I'm sure our parents said about us when we were growing up too. So, there's definitely a little bit of concern of where that's going. But for us, we were impacted. We were in the alert zone for the Paddy's Pond fire. My parents are still in an alert zone for the CBN fire. Fortunately, they're in a community that's not close to where the fire was most active. So, they fared well. But, even just throwing that wrench of being in an alert zone and, your brain goes to such a different place. We had the opportunity to have the advance notice, which a lot of people did not get. And, I guess it's nice that you can kind of be a little bit more humorous about it now, because we looked at the things that I had thrown in the boxes to put in the car, and I'm like, where in the world did I think that this was important? But, from a professional perspective, I have a lot of single-parent clients from the North Shore that had, back in July, registered for back to school. So their biggest concern a month and a half ago was, let's get some pencils and let's get some supplies for my son or daughter or multiple kids going to school. And it came time to coordinate delivery and pickups of backpacks in the last few weeks. And I stopped and I just looked at the list of names that I had in front of me from the North Shore. And I just picked up the phone and I just called them individually. Right. And, they went from, we need to get a backpack for my little girl to go to Cabot Academy, to now Cabot Academy doesn't exist anymore. So, they are facing a complete shift in priorities and concerns. So, it's also hard, I find, as a mom especially, not to take some of these concerns to heart.
Yeah.
Luckily, my daughter being 18 months, at the end of a stressful day, she doesn't care. She's got that smiling face, the dog's wagging his tail, and, life is a little bit better. But from a professional standpoint, our organization has had to shift what our focus is for single parents in those regions. We're not just trying to help them out with a backpack. We're giving them support from a 360 perspective.
This is rebuilding support. It is existing and moving through an emergency period of time, right? And trying to be as okay as possible, and then looking to how do we rebuild to what comes next, and where will that be, and what does that look like, from house to school to community, all of it.
And the basic needs. One of the moms, God love her, her daughter, they had 15 minutes. And she's like, pack the important things. Mom's going to pack her bag. And when they got to their accommodation, the little girl just took all of her toys.
Yeah.
Because she's a little girl, So, the first thing I did was ran to Walmart and bought a bunch of stuff in her size to send out, But you take for granted sometimes just how quick your life could change. And for a lot of these people, being a single mom or a single dad, man, that's hard enough. Yeah. And then you factor in this on top of it, and it becomes next to impossible. So, our perspective has shifted organizationally, but I would say, you can't help but personally be affected by it then too. Yeah.
Amy Pena-Rubia is on the line. Hi, Amy. Thanks for coming back on the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We got in touch with you. So we did a show a while back, half a while back now, about support for moms, new moms. Remind folks a bit about who you are, and then I'll just ask you about what's on your mind as summer transitions into fall.
Yeah, so I think it was actually last September we were brought in and we talked a little bit about Stroller Club and the Harbor. And those are 2 parenting groups that I'm a part of for people with their newborns and toddlers. And I have 2 little boys myself. My oldest is going to kindergarten, so I'm kind of entering this new stage of parenthood, navigating a lot of unknowns in this conversation, listening to all these different perspectives has been really eye-opening here for me today.
So then, with the things you're navigating, and also for whether it's the Harbor and Stroller Club for parents you're talking to, like, what are you hearing from folks as we move into the fall for like the things that are really kind of on your mind for whether it's politically, social issues, and also some of the parenting side to be just a bit more specific?
Yeah, so on a personal level, I guess for me, sending my little boy to kindergarten is navigating, both of us working, myself and my husband working outside of the home, and then the childcare piece is huge for us. So we're going to be leaning on grandparents for some pickup days. We weren't able to secure any after-school care, so that's a big piece that I'm navigating. I know that's a big thing for a lot of people out there, and of course now going to have my kids 2 different drop-offs and 2 different locations in the morning. And then from a social, I guess, community level with some of the groups I'm a part of, I think like eye-opening to these conversations and how we support parents to be able to support their children in some of these topics, thinking about what we send to school, like you said, brand names, how we talk to our kids about those sort of items that they're bringing. And I really just want to do a really good job to make sure my kids are supported as well.
This kindergarten class, I'm just thinking back, for this kindergarten class, these are kids all born, I mean, this is the pandemic class starting kindergarten.
It is, yeah, it is. Our little pandemic babies are off to school. So kind of following through some of the groups that I'm a part of, like me joining the Harbor and the Stroller Club really came out of being a new mom in 2020 and not really having that support postpartum. It was a very isolating time and there wasn't a lot of groups and that sort of thing. So we're really trying to work and make sure moms are and dads are connected now with each other and getting out and doing those things. So now it's kind of carrying through as I enter a new phase. And I'm going to learn about some new challenges with being a mom with a little boy in school, of how I can support other parents who are also going through those things.
And before I let you go, Amy, I'm just curious, with kindergarten starting, in this first round of, like, when we say back to school shopping, in this case it is into school, the first round of shop. What was that like what's that been like so far for you as you've kind of gone out and looked at the prices and costs and thoughts around what could be needed, and then also thinking of, the years ahead?
So for me, one of the things, juggling between my husband and I working and trying to, fill our time with the kids and everything like that, I actually availed of the Dick's school supply pickup that I know was mentioned earlier, just for the convenience of being able to order it online and knowing everything was in there and not really having to go shop around, because for me it's a lot of overwhelm, I think, with trying to make sure I have everything and making sure we're all set up to head into something that we've never really done before. So that was a great resource. But hearing that different lists have different brand names and all that sort of stuff, I mean, in my own work life, I buy all of my supplies from Dollarama because it's the cheapest option for me. So I didn't even know that was a thing, but that gives me a lot of perspective about items that I send my kids to school with and that sort of stuff.
Amy, thanks for taking the time for this little chat. Appreciate you coming back on the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, cheers. Amy Pena-Rubia there. Folks, any thoughts on what Amy was saying? Because like the themes, you're talking to parents, a lot of the stuff is, the themes are all there, right?
The COVID piece. My daughter was in grade 6.
Yeah.
When COVID hit, we broke for Easter, and then all heck broke loose. So there was no grade 6. There was all these celebrations supposed to happen grade 6. Going to 2 years of junior high, we're still in that COVID phase, so there was no big, I guess, farewell for the junior high. So going into this graduation year, this mama got some big expectations. I'm having a carnival. Like, I'm having something. It's going to be party central, and they might not want it, but it's happening because my behind is going to be in that school on the first day and saying, where do I sign up a list of parents? Because this has been, the COVID babies, the COVID kids, the isolation through junior high, all of that stuff has it's just so different. Again, I said my son is 27. He was in school, and we celebrated every milestone. We celebrated every milestone together as a group, and the world has shrunk. And it's still a little bit like that, and I just want to blow that world up in in a good way, and celebrate with all of these kids and all these teachers and all of these parents who survived these years. So, just warning everybody out there that if you're
ready.
Queenie, I'm coming.
Jillian, what about yourself?
So my oldest son is a COVID kindergartner. So he started kindergarten during COVID in 2020.
Right.
And you were encouraged to, not go inside the school during drop off that year, unless your kid absolutely needed it. And my oldest son has always been very independent, but I remember him looking at me and being like, okay, so you're just dropping me off. And I'm like, I'm good now.
Bye.
So, I didn't see the inside of the school that year.
Right.
In 2021, we also had shutdowns, and the teacher went off on maternity leave after the second report card. Still don't know what that teacher looks like. You were still not, discouraged of going in the school, which, it is what it is. I even feel like the next year there might have been a shutdown. So I feel like that particular cohort, it's almost like I feel like that year they brought back the 80s latchkey kids, because these kids were basically like, good luck, have fun, describe to mommy the best you can. And, if kids telling you about their day, they're not very good at it. So
Fine.
I feel like, there's a couple of years where I had major blind spots about, the experience in school. And then when my youngest started kindergarten a few years ago, I remember being so tearful because we got to go to all the preschool sessions. I got to go to all the parent sessions. I got to go inside the school. And I was just like, wow, I feel like I'm not just abandoning you, peace out, good luck.
That latchkey, because I forgot. When I was in high school, every second speech was speech time. There'd be 3 or 4 latchkey speeches from back then, and then things changed, right, from the 90s onward. And then to go, because when we just talk about this cohort for kindergarten, they were babies, didn't really know anything 5 years ago, but the kindergarten kids did, and some of them will have those memories.
And you were probably also working from home maybe all that spring and summer, and they were out in the living room and they were ripping it up. Yeah. So, they had a lot of independence all around, and then they went to school like that, feral. My kids were just, they were running the show. They probably had a great time those couple of years.
Yeah.
Us and the teachers, maybe not so much.
Maybe less so. Bill or Danielle, thoughts?
The big thing, the big theme that keeps coming up for me, Adam, is how do we protect our kids?
Yep.
Right? For a lot of parents that come in and see me, that's a big issue for them. So we talked about the social media side. Growing up, you talk about the 80s and that sort of thing. Right? Once you got in through the door and closed your door, you were safe. Yeah. You had your safe place. Right? You didn't have to answer the phone if it rang, and it was discouraged after 9 anyway. But now, you can get into your bedroom and you can be bullied up there. You can have posts on your social media.
Yeah, it's all the time.
It's all the time. It's 24/7. And as parents that have kids going into kindergarten, have kids going to high school, have kids going into college, right? It's something that plays on a lot of people's minds. Dads, particularly with the protectionism. How do I protect my kids now? Right? And I don't know that we have a whole lot of answers. Like you talk about maybe keeping social media from kids to a certain point. I'm not sure that would be a great solution because like things back in the 80s, you can find ways to get them if you want them. Other kids will have them. They'll be right. What I don't see a lot of is teaching kids how to use social media and that sort of thing responsibly. Yeah. Right. Teaching them when they feel like they need to take a break. Right. Teaching parents how to navigate some of those waters. Right. But I know for a lot of parents, they just feel helpless. Right, as they send their kids off into the abyss to deal with what they're going to deal with, and hope that they're going to come home and tell them what's going on, but they don't know.
As we talk about this today, looking at my email, let me see, 2 hours ago, the email came in. The Education Accord NL has released its final report. 10-year vision, 110 calls to transformation. This is health and well-being in education environments, early learning and childhood development, education engagement and transformation, K-12, post-secondary education and learning across the lifespan. massive look at rethinking education in this province. I'm not going to ask you what's in it because I didn't read it yet either because it just came out 2 hours ago. But point being, it's that where do we need to go with it? Because you just touched on it, part of it. Where do we need to go with education in this province for the way you are all looking at, from your kids to the clients to your grandkids to, the university age young folks too, and beyond? Like, what are your thoughts around either this or just in general about education in Newfoundland and Labrador? Because there's a reason why this was created, and it's not because this place was doing great with education.
I think flexibility. I think that it has to be a flexible program going forward, something that meets the kids where they are, something that isn't looking at a model that worked 20 years ago for the kids in the environment that they're in today.
And some of that model was started in like the 19th century, right? Like for the way we did education. It's like, well, it always was this way. Well, then the internet and AI is here now and things have changed.
There was a big shakeup. You and I talked about this a little bit before the show. We talked about how, denominational, the religion piece of education was a big shock for the province, but the province still supported that bill to take that out of education. And I think now today, parents would get behind, I believe, a shake-up to the education system if it included something that is going to include more people, more children, more families, and meet them where they are. Having a single-parent family when I was growing up was not a normal thing. I know today the little kids are drawing pictures, and it could be two mommies, it could be two daddies, it could be one mommy and a grandparents. I mean, it's all families, all types, and it's the same thing with education. I think we have to take a look at families and what works. So I'm really interested to read this and see what kind of recommendations are inside here.
I think it's given parents the tools to be supported as well. Because in a lot of cases, how the kids are going to school now is not how we went to school. And I know from our organization's perspective, a lot of the parents that come to see us, whether it's for food bank or for any other service, honestly, at the end of the day, they're just looking for support and someone to talk to, because there's so many parents that don't have grandparents nearby to help out, that don't have family, they've been disconnected. They could be new Canadians, which, our province is becoming more and more diverse from that perspective. And, as they always say, you can't pour from an empty cup. Yeah. And kids soak all that up. They soak up your anxiety. They can tell when you're stressed about something or when something's an issue. So, giving parents the resources to be able to support their kids in the education system, I think, is where a lot of it starts as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From either of you, thoughts, Julian?
So we've been going through some assessments with my youngest son this last year, which, the wait lists, if I was to go through the public system, were a couple of years. And, luckily we found a way to, cover it privately. And I was very, very lucky to have the support of the teacher this year in grade 1. And she was amazing, trying to work through, identifying the different issues that, he was experiencing. And the thing is, he's not a disruptive kid. So generally in the school system, the only resources that are available is if the child is actively disrupting in the classroom. And in grade 1, she had 25 other 5 and 6-year-olds. I have no idea how she was able to communicate with me so frequently and support me, who was, trying to drive, this assessment treatment process. So, I know class sizes have been talked about quite a bit. As a mom of 2 boys and one who's, experiencing issues, so he's, having issues with dysgraphia and, his attention, his short-term memory. So these are all things that are going to affect him academically, but because he's, not hitting or throwing things, the support is not necessarily there in school. So we're trying to, find that outside of the school system. But as a mom of 2 boys, again, for a very long time, I don't think the school system was necessarily conducive to the way that little boys operate, right? We have a very still traditional. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of amazing teachers who have introduced new tools and approaches to allow kids to, be more active in the classroom, to not have to stand up and be obedient. For a really long time, the school system was designed around obedience, not outcomes. And I do think that is shifting, but, it takes a long time for systems to shift. So I'm very interested to see that as someone who is personally, navigating some issues, with their own kids, but also observing teachers who are just so restricted in time and resources.
Bill?
For me, I'm going to look forward to reading the document as well, but if it doesn't start with more guidance counselors and assessments in the school system, then I'm going to close it right away, because that's where we need to start. We're not getting to the kids. Kids are going a year without having an assessment done. We grew up in the 80s, and our education system was based on memorization. You memorized the list, you filled in the blank, right? You drew from one to the other to match it up. Kids learn differently, right? Young boys, we know now, if they're not disrupted, they're not getting the help, right? And they can also be bribed with stickers and that kind of stuff just to try and keep them obedient. So, we got a lot of work to do on getting the right personnel in the schools. The next piece will be looking at how we leverage the technology that's coming down, because you mentioned AI earlier in a negative light, but AI is coming.
It's the future, man. And we did a show on it yesterday, right? I had a guest in here talking about the prosthetic arm that he's developing with AI, and down the road have smart skin and that thing to use your brain. If I get too technical here, stop me. But it's just stuff that is here right now. And the conversation yesterday was it can be a really great tool if you use the pointy end, but at the same time, you've got grad students who are using it to cheat.
Absolutely.
So this is the world we're in right now. And then we're talking about the future of education and also parenting and where we're pushing everyone this fall and beyond.
Yeah. And then you got, kids that are cheating and then creating a whip for their own butt, because then they're sitting back for a week before it's graded to wonder if they're going to get caught. Right? Yeah. So for a full week, their mental health is taken a hit. Right now, of course, the option is don't cheat. Yeah. Right? But, the kids are doing it. They're using the technology that's out there. So how do we leverage that into the school system and going forward? That needs to be paramount as opposed to reactive.
30 seconds each. Final thoughts, Danielle?
Well, I think that, we all have different perspectives, but they all seem to echo around the same themes. And a lot of that being that, life is just not easy right now. There's a lot of unknowns, and there's a lot of people in the same situation. So, if anything, no one is in this alone. We're all going through it just in different ways. And I think it just speaks to the importance of community coming together right now.
Pam?
How about just be kind? Be kind to the teachers, be patient with the parents, the kids. Someone knocks on your door, give them a smile, listen to what they have to say. It's election time. This is an interesting time, and you should have a chance to hear what they have to say and to speak with them. So be kind. Don't slam the door.
Yeah, take a beat before, even if you think of a reaction, maybe just take a second and then see how it feels a second later.
Yeah,
right?
let's all just be nice.
Bill?
For me, it's day-to-day logistics, especially going to school, young kids. My kids are in university now, and I look back on it and say that was like a blink of an eye. Even though, we had challenges day-to-day, the time just went so very fast. Try to enjoy the time, as challenging as it can be, because it does go really, really fast. And, you're doing the best you can. If you need help, the help is out there as well.
Jillian?
Yeah, my philosophy this fall is definitely going to be, don't sweat the small stuff. I always tell the teacher, you have as much grace from me as you can give me. I've lived a lifetime by the time my kids show up to school, so please forgive me, whatever they look like or whatever they forgot or whatever, And so, be kind. The teachers often have families and they're grappling with issues themselves. And, the parents likewise. And, if you get a chance to advocate to, any politician municipally or provincially this fall, definitely take the opportunity and tell them, what their support would mean to your family.
Excellent. Thank you all for this conversation today.
Thanks.
That's it for the show, folks. If you got thoughts for parents and for the election-wise, too, for both of them, the signal at cbc.ca. Get in touch with us. I want to know how you feel and your thoughts on from back to school to politics and beyond for what is on your mind this fall. Tomorrow on the show, the Newfoundland Quarterly the quarterly is out, and we're going to talk about that. The theme, From Ashes and Embers. So there you go. Cheers.